Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Relating to DevSecOps, where we explore the development, security, and operational issues of today so that we can solve real-world problems with people that face them. We're your hosts, Ken Toler and Mike McCabe. Welcome back, Mike. It's been a while. We're going like months at a time now, but we're getting it. We're getting back on the wagon here.
Which is what we say every single time.
Every time.
Eventually we'll be back on the wagon, yes.
Yeah, we've got some exciting guests coming up, though. We're getting the schedule together. I know I said that before, but now we actually have them booked, and we will be posting those episodes shortly. So keep an eye out on the X and LinkedIn and all of our messaging boards for those. But today, it's just Mike and I again, and we're going to be talking about something that was... I don't know, pretty interesting surprise, I guess, when it comes to just all of the things going on with big tech and purchases and acquisitions, and it's Google's acquisition of Wiz.io, which I think anybody that's working in cloud security or application security or in the cloud has seen and either grown to love or loved to hate. Mike, you sort of brought this up. What are your initial thoughts on this buyout of Wiz?
Yeah, I mean it's a big one for for folks who are in the cloud security space, or I think even people who aren't necessarily in cloud security but do a lot of cloud work have seen the Wiz name. They're kind of the heavyweight of what used to be the cloud security posture management tools, then got turned into Cloud Native Application Protection Platforms. I think that's what CNAP stands for, which is just ridiculous. We love our acronyms. There's a Gartner analyst who's just in a cave making up these names and passing pieces of paper back out. But that's what it is now. So it's more than just a CSPM. It does a lot more about, things like images and infrastructure as code, and so it's this whole massive platform, and it's been shopped around before. I think Wiz was going to get bought out by Google last year for $23 billion, and now they're officially in an agreement to be bought out. Obviously, there's like regulatory hurdles they have to get through, and things can get crushed at any time. But now they're getting bought out for $32 million cash,
wow,
which is not bad. Not bad, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all these big acquisitions. I mean, I'm of two minds about it. Just like whether or not it's good that there are like super big organizations consolidating all this stuff, centralizing it, dare to say monopolizing it into one platform. On one hand, it seems really good that we're thinking about security as part of the product, but on the other hand, it's I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a lack of diversity inside of the space, and you're taking the biggest players in this. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, Wiz was becoming the heavyweight of all of this stuff. I think the closest competitor was Orca, and I don't know nearly as many people using that as Wiz, and so they became like the de facto tool for a lot of cloud security needs. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they were already a heavyweight. They were buying companies left and right. They bought another company for a decent chunk of change last year. So they were obviously going for the whole platform play, which a lot of companies are trying to do. And yeah, I think the interesting thing is they're getting bought by a cloud provider. Like Google is Google, but Google is also GCP, one of the three big cloud providers, probably the least popular of the three between GCP, Azure, and AWS. But now they have this huge security tool that secures a ton of AWS and Azure workloads. Like there's a ton of customers that are purely AWS and Azure. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops, and if there's any kind of conflict of interest, or if they focus their development more on GCP to make it like the GCP security tool, or I don't know. Everyone has feelings about Google and what they do with products. So some people love what they've done, and some people point to the graveyard by Google webpage. So,
I mean, do you think that? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned already like the support for other cloud platforms and things. Do you have a feeling this is going to be turned to a more of a pay to play sort of model where some of these features aren't available to other cloud platforms that are available in GCP? Is that your concern?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, maybe they could start developing the platform going forward to be more focused on what matters to GCP and less what matters for AWS and Azure. One kind of thought that I read from one person was maybe what they'll be doing is just handing this out for free for GCP customers. So, Wiz is not a cheap tool. I've heard some crazy quotes from even kind of smaller and mid-sized companies for $1 million a year for, a decent sized footprint, but nothing enormous. And so it's not a cheap tool. So if Google can be like, hey, come to GCP, yeah, put your workloads here, and we'll give you like the best cloud security platform for free, basically, or close to free. That's a pretty good marketing and sales tactic. If that kind of affects what they do for Azure and AWS, that'll be the interesting thing to see if they start, just not focusing on that as much. But that might open up some competition too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go because this kind of follows the acquisition of, was it an acquisition or joint? But the Mandiant deal in 2022, and it's like this story about how Google is sort of consolidating everything under its umbrella, but you can still sort of access Mandiant services, right? You can still use them to respond to a breach, and some of their tooling isn't completely integrated with Google Cloud, especially like the attack surface management and things like that. And if you've used those tools, you'll see sometimes you sort of end up on a Mandiant dashboard. Sometimes you sort of end up on a Google dashboard, and they're still working through like consolidating that stuff. But I don't know, like if the intent, like what's not clear to me is whether there's an intention to keep these things as separate products or to like make them all Google products. And with the Mandiant stuff, it seems like there is an intention to make it all like a Google-centric product. I'm trying to remember what the product name is for the attack surface management, but it's like the Google Threat Intelligence Manager or something like that. Let me see if I can find it. But it's pulling in that attack surface management thing, but it doesn't. I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but sometimes when I go to Google services, I have a hard time like finding what I'm looking for. So you have, if you're looking for there's like their SIM product versus their attack surface management product versus, the Mandiant stuff. It's like you can end up on a page and realize you're looking at the wrong thing, and it's not 100% clear. Do you have that problem?
Yes, I was just thinking about the fact that G Suite sent me an alert and sent me an email with a button to click that didn't go to the alert. So yeah, I don't know if they understand user experience very well, but yeah. I mean, that's been a lot of the, I think, negative takes on this acquisition is a lot of companies, maybe Mandiant survived with a decent reputation, but like Chronicle that they bought, I forgot what year it was, but it was a few years ago. And that was supposed to be a big Splunk competitor, like a SIEM competitor platform. They bought that, and I don't know anyone who uses it. Like, I know it does get used by some companies, but again, like, did they buy it to make it flourish and to take over more market share than Splunk, or did they do it? To just take something off, like take a competitor off the board and then give it for free to their customers to try to win more customers? I don't know. This isn't a CNBC market evaluation discussion, but I think we both agree that Google's made some weird missteps over the years.
Well, I just it's weird, right? Like I think in one space I'm kind of enjoying it because and like on one side of my brain I'm enjoying it because it's like with with Mandiant, that you had like the attack surface management and sort of your external footprint network scanning, and then with Google you have like the virus total integration and private scanning and things like that. And I found the name of the product. It's the Google Threat Intelligence product, and so that is all ASM and vulnerability intelligence and private scanning and all of these things in one space. And so if you're a Google customer or a GCP customer, it's like, oh, cool, I have access to these things and I can use it. But then I don't get the SIM functionality. I don't get the security operations center, which is what Chronicle became. So I'm a little bit nervous because it's almost like now you have these companies that folks were looking at and using and sort of riding into that had the capability to extend into other platforms, AWS, absorb logs or whatever, and they're almost now hidden behind this Google wall that make them less accessible because they're so hidden in this like Google landscape of what product does what. And I have a lot of trouble keeping those all together. So it's like as a GCP customer, if they give it to you for free, or if they introduce it to you for free, I think that's great. I think that it makes it so that security is part of these products, and that there's less that a small company has to invest in order to get to those products. And I enjoy that Google is putting security out there as a product that they stand behind and quote sell as a piece of GCP, as opposed to it being a secondary feature, which is how I sometimes feel about with AWS. Like with AWS, that security is considered as part of every product and every service, but you don't have security services that are really that strong compared to the external market third-party vendors. Whereas GCP is like, and Google are like buying these third-party vendors to integrate into the product to make that a differentiator for GCP, because like you mentioned, it seems like they're less used. Maybe this is something that helps them stand apart. So I like that, but it's just hard to navigate, and I just don't know. I don't know. There just seems like not fishy is the wrong word, but it just doesn't seem accessible. It doesn't seem as accessible as it should be, given like what you're watching happen. It seems like you should make it more accessible to GCP customers, but I'm not seeing anybody hop on and use it. Same thing with like Chronicle and Security Operations Center. Just like you said, people are sticking with their existing SIM or looking for low-cost alternatives because this acquisition didn't really help them in their GCP environment.
Yeah. Who can predict the future? I mean, we can base it off of what Google's done before, but who knows what will happen. Hopefully all the negative ideas don't come to fruition and it succeeds underneath them, because I mean, Wiz is they're a pretty cool company just in general too. Like they hired a bunch of really smart security researchers, Scott Piper, Rami McCarthy, like some smart folks over there doing interesting research. So it'd suck if they kind of got swallowed up and all those smart folks didn't get to keep doing the interesting work that they're doing. So it's great marketing for Wiz. Who knows if Google will care or not, but yeah, it's an interesting product and interesting group that they built over there. So crazy amounts of money, huge acquisition, but no one I don't think is that surprised based on just the amount of hype that Wiz got. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think if you're AWS or Azure, like why wouldn't you start building your own kind of competitor to be like, I feel like they've been behind in this area a lot from a CSPM perspective, and maybe their view is like, we don't need to offer a security tool to secure our cloud because it's supposed to be secure already. So it's kind of like selling the antidote for the poison you gave someone. But, we all know that that's not true. We wouldn't have jobs if cloud environments were 100% secure all the time. So you would think they'd jump in this huge market. And now there's kind of an opportunity that the biggest competitor just got sort of taken off the map. But I don't know. What do you think about that gap that they've always had?
I mean, I think that, with AWS, I think that it's always been about the shared responsibility model. And so where that shared responsibility model is where they aren't providing tools. So it's almost like a simple example, it would be like, we're not going to give you a firewall for your VPCs because, we operate the network layer with our firewalls and whatnot. And so once we've established a service, that service is, in this lane, and then everything you build on top of that service is in your lane. And so it's like we will expose the things that you need for information, but we're not going to build the tools to consolidate that information. Otherwise, we would abstract that service. And I think that development happens behind the scenes, and that's what becomes those services. So, if they launch a new Elastic Beanstalk recommended platform on Python, whatever, that's where all of that research goes in. And I don't think, you could make the same argument on the other side for Google. Just think about how complex projects are to manage in Google. I don't know if you have this experience, but I have a really good, maybe this is just maybe this is just general ignorance of GCP, but you tell me if I'm wrong, is how quickly projects can run away in organizations and have hundreds of thousands of projects between people creating workspaces and projects for their Google Docs integrations and all these things versus your account structure in AWS. I find the account structure in AWS, the root account approach, IAM as a fundamental, firewall or basic security fundamental for AWS. That mentality doesn't necessarily carry over to GCP because you have this projects and organizations and folders sort of set up, and I find it super messy, but Google's giving me some security tools. So what is better, Yeah. I think that the organization of AWS seems better to me. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you made a good point about the AWS thing, because it's I think AWS's philosophy is we're going to give you a secure product and we're going to tell you what's your responsibility to secure the rest of it, of how to configure it. And then they're going to be all right, we wash our hands of it to make sure it is secure. And also we'll write some blog posts about how you can use Security Hub and config and CloudWatch rules to like build your own kind of ghetto CSPM, but we're not going to give you like a tool that tells you how things are configured wrong across the board. Like they've never given kind of the easy button for cloud security. They make it much more complex, I think, to get the same thing you get out of Wiz. And so yeah, I think you're right that that's like it's a philosophical difference. I think about it in more securing individual products, maybe more on the secure defaults and less on the here's a tool to make sure your environment is secure. From the GCP side, yeah, I agree with you. Like there's some benefits to their whole like folder / project structure that's like a little more flexible than AWS, like setting up an account, setting up different orgs, setting up different BUs. Like that's normally centrally controlled so that people can't set up their own. But then the flip side is, yeah, you can make that a mess. And then there's certain projects that are required for certain services you have to set up in kind of a standalone project. And so that adds to the kind of cruft in a GCP environment. But yeah, it's like all different philosophical choices that these cloud providers made. So it's interesting, but it does feel like AWS and Azure's try to do it a little bit, I think, with like Security Center and their Defender for freaking everything. Like I think they've tried to do some of that, but it's just like people want a platform. Like I was telling you before we recorded, I was at a CISO event roundtable and people were talking about budgets and they're like, we are centralizing on platforms, and they don't want 15 different tools to manage because that means 15 different groups to manage those tools. And the big thing with a platform like Wiz is you have everything in one place. I think that's what people want. And the cloud providers aren't really offering that. So now Google has that, I think probably the second biggest platform after Palo. So it's, not a bad play for them at all.
Yeah, I mean, the platform thing is almost like the single pane of glass conversation, though. And I don't know. It's funny to hear these conversations because you hear everyone talk about like the benefits of diversifying your workloads so that you're not reliant on a single vendor. And we had conversations early on around multi-cloud and shared cloud and all those things. And now, folks are like, we just need the easy button. And I think that we are gravitating almost in an unhealthy way more and more towards that centralization of these large companies and organizations because we want to transfer the risk. And it's like companies, I don't think, are necessarily holding themselves accountable for the things that they build. And I think you do see that, I've told myself I wasn't going to bring this up on this call, but you do see that more and more with where we are with AI, there's just, or LLMs or, your GPTs or whatever. It's just how quickly organizations are to trust because the speed at which you get to something with from idea to something you can pitch and sell and show value in is so fast that all of the considerations, the threat model, are ignored or not considered. And it also makes it a lot harder for us on the security side to even be aware of these things because it's we're not even a part of the conversation sometimes because it happens so fast. So I don't like that move, of this this over-reliance on platforms. But I get why. Teams are getting smaller, budgets are getting smaller, economy's tough right now, and so I get it. But it does. I think we're going to see, just like we do every hype cycle, a correction, like an overcorrection in this. I'm hoping that that's more companies pop up that do more of these specific things in a really, really good way, because it's inevitable that all of these acquisitions, that some of these really awesome products get killed, or they go to the graveyard, or they don't have the same momentum that they used to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's like you said, it's a trend. People move towards platforms. They get sick of platforms because they're, a single pane of glass of mediocre features, basically, and it doesn't actually support what they need to do. Then they diversify, buy the hot new product out there, would buy 10 of them for the different things, and then struggle to unify all the results into a single place and have a single pane of glass. Then they go back to a platform. Yeah, there's this. Yeah, I don't know if it's a 5-year or a 10-year cycle, but yeah, I've heard the same things. And you would think, I mean, this is a different discussion, but I think there's a big disconnect between CISOs and the people who are doing the work and what they need and what the CISO wants out of a tool. The CISO should never be picking the security tool. I get that they want the fancy thing and they want the dashboards and they want the golf tournaments and things like that. They shouldn't be involved in that decision unless they know the actual technical, kind of pieces to what the people at the ground level are doing. That's my hot take for this recording. CISOs might not agree with that, but yeah, that's not your role at that point.
I think that, I agree. I think that as when you are a CISO kind of needs the output and the objectives to be completed. I think where they start to get involved in tools is where they see an output that they like a lot. And if they have an output that they feel like they can use to gain buy-in or budget or enhance the security posture, whatever it is, and it makes their life easier, then it is on the team to show that they can do that with a different tool, right? Because ultimately it is unfortunately a balance between what you can convey and what you are actually doing.
Yep.
And no matter how awesome your security tooling is, if you can't show it, especially in a large company, no one's going to believe you. So you need to be able to show that work. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes it goes the route of being too pretty and not actually doing much.
Yeah, I think that's a good topic for another day for sure. Is we could probably have some hot takes there based on our different experiences, but yeah, you make a good point. So yeah, I think the thing with Wiz was it was kind of both. It gave CISOs what they wanted, and also the ground level folks liked working with it.
I agree, and they have great educational resources. They had a bunch of certifications that didn't require you to buy anything. There was a lot of like community driven branding and community driven activities that made it so good, because it was like, yes, you had this expensive thing, but they worked on getting buy-in from both parties, the technical folks and the higher ups that needed the pretty dashboards and the metrics. And yep. I think with you, I've always really appreciated that, and use a lot of those free resources. So I hope that doesn't go away. I hope that they're sort of left to their own devices when it comes to that kind of thing, to maintain that community relationship and to keep the product brand and to keep the product name, because that's what is so strong and so valuable in it. Like if it just becomes another integrated product, I don't know if it's going to be as valuable. Yeah.
Well, I just think about the number. Their revenue, I think last year was like 750 million, and they just got bought for 32 million. And I mean, I'm sure you know the PE framework is buy and then you just slash and burn and just try to rake in as much profit as you can while you can. So they got to get paid back for that 32 billion. So we'll see about that. But you're right. They did so many cool free projects. Like they did the capture the flag thing and the cloud-based capture the flag, which was really cool. They did a Kubernetes one. They just released a prompt injection CTF. So like Wiz nailed marketing. Like whoever their marketing folks were, just like totally nailed it. Got the security community, got how to do like get buy-in from both CISOs and also from the people who do the work day in and day out. So like kudos to them. They deserve the money, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we've reached like an action, like a true output here. Just kind of, I guess we'll wait and see, but, and I'm hopeful, but I do have some considerable worries about where Wiz goes from here. In the same way that I had worries and still have worries about HashiCorp and Terraform and all of that. And it kind of sucks to see these awesome new organizations just get absorbed into into FANG basically,
Yeah. Yep, for sure. I forgot about HashiCorp, but yeah, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you just like take the track record of like the last, I don't know, like 8 years, you've got like Red Hat, HashiCorp, Wiz. What are the other big ones? Like, who's gonna buy Splunk?
Well, they got bought out like
Mandiant
3 years ago. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone has bought one of these heavyweights from the security space and made them better and cheaper. I think it's been the opposite. So,
Rapid7 and what was the thing Rapid7 pulled in?
The Divi Cloud.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. Craziness.
Yep.
So with that,
uplifting note.
Yeah, and this uplifting note of the little guy being absorbed into the Goliaths of tech, hopefully we see positive movement in the industry as these organizations become more security conscious and security aware, and we still get to use the tools we grow to know and love. But a hot take as we end, and I'll give you your chances on it. I think that this is going to either A, give us a new lease on new sort of innovative companies, as the big behemoths traditionally will absorb these things and move slower and slower, opening it up for more nimble, fast, smaller organizations to grow again. Or I've seen a really big surge in open source software, and some folks sort of leaning on that as it becomes easier and easier to to sort of find a good open source project and as those become more advanced. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think in a lot of ways it'll probably open up new interesting startups. I mean, investors are going to see Wiz getting bought for an insane multiple and be like, all right, I want to get into the security space and start funding some more interesting startups. I think they've been doing that for a while, but Wiz is definitely the most recent huge unicorn to get bought out. So it just creates more momentum. So yeah, I think we'll see a lot more interesting startups, and maybe some folks from Wiz will spin out and do their own thing. And there's a ton of AI stuff to still be built and hype up. So yeah, I think for sure it'll probably be a good thing for everyone except for Wiz customers.
Yeah.
Unless you're on GCP. That's my take.
Cool. Well, that about wraps it up for our episode on CNAP, the Wiz acquisition, and all things cloud security. We have some episodes coming up on, what was it? What did you call it? Vibe coding?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to talk about vibe coding, and how that is affecting DevSecOps and the world of development and security. And keep an eye out for those guests as we post them in order on our Twitter and all of our outreach mechanisms. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.